I'm Tor.
Hi, I'm Aurora, but you can call us Casey. Before we properly get started, we started with let's go, and now I'm just thinking about let's go
let's
again.
go. Yes, no, I'm
Go.
thinking about let's go again too.
So
I think
about
about that every time. Every time that I say let's go for the past 5 or 6 years, I have thought of let's go.
Welcome to Infodump, the podcast where we have less goo.
Yeah, but not zero goo.
Not zero. There is less.
Not
there's
as
less
much
of it. There's
Yeah,
not as much.
You can never truly eliminate goo. You can reduce
Your body is 70% goo. You know, that's just where it's at some point.
Higher than that, yes.
I mean, yeah. God, I mean, look, I have a button that I sell locally that's like, welcome to Slime Girl City Population Me. And I... Which is, I mean, it's a mood. It's a mood.
Yeah, sure, it's a mood. There's a market for that.
I'd like to introduce my co-host, because you have Jollibee, which you ate yesterday, by the way.
Yes, I did.
Was that Jollibee or was that Jollibee's cousin?
That was not Jollibee. Jollibee is plastic. The actual Jollibee is plastic.
Okay, good. I mean, if you had just an actual durian this entire time,
yes, it would not be.
Burning.
Yes, it would not be in good condition to eat. I don't think. Although it could be frozen. Those things freeze really well. Actually, it was
That's
frozen.
fair.
Yeah, the durian that I got yesterday, it was frozen when I got it, and. It didn't fully thaw for the hours that I carted it around New York on the subway.
That's really fun. God, there has to be, I mean, I guess you didn't eat it on the subway, but I mean, there are laws on the books elsewhere about eating durians on public transportation.
Yes,
right?
Absolutely. Yes. It's what I said in the stream was New York is sort of the ideal city for me to have done this because it's one of the few cities in the world where I can easily buy a durian and also bring it with me on the subway.
Right. This is true. I mean, I couldn't imagine trying to take a bus in Houston with a durian, for example, and just I don't know, what's the least durian friendly city in the United States? That's actually
that's a very good question. That's a very good question.
I think Boise, Idaho is the thing that's coming. Yeah, Boise, maybe.
Yeah,
maybe Rollins, Wyoming, or something out in the middle of nowhere.
Okay, yeah, sure. I mean, places where they. I don't know, places where they may not have heard of durians, paradoxically, would be less likely to have antibodies to durians. People would be like, oh, that's a cool, weird tropical fruit. Whereas, it's in, it is in Southeast Asian cities where durians are ubiquitous that you see no durians signs all over.
Right. I'm sorry. The antibodies to durians is it's one of the most insane things I've heard all week. It's I don't know. It's
that's going in the Tor's cabinet out of context clips.
Oh, absolutely. It's going. Yeah. I mean, Durian Antibody is my favorite indie rock band.
Oh, yeah.
I love a good Durian Antibody show. Everybody's always doing all of the drugs.
All the drugs. All the drugs at once.
All of them. Doctors recommend doing all the drugs. Okay. I need to introduce my co-host because I don't think you can see it quite yet. But this is Stanley.
We don't have visuals here, but yes.
I know we don't have visuals. I'm going to show you what it is.
It's a Pikachu. It's a big fat Pikachu.
It's a big fat Pikachu. It's a 15-pound weighted plush Pikachu. I thought we were going to be recording the visuals for this one. Are we not?
We were. Well, I'm not. Are you?
Oh, well. You specifically asked me to record my video this time.
Damn it.
Tor.
I forgot about that. Okay.
That's okay.
Could we do an RSS feed at least? Of this?
Yeah, let's do an RSS feed.
Last time, everyone in the comments was asking for one. So let's do RSS feeds of this episode, the previous one, and the ones going forward.
I like how both of us know how we can do that. Do you know how to do an RSS feed? I don't know how to do an RSS feed.
I have so much going on that I would pay you to set that up.
Okay, I'll figure it out. I'm about to have a lot of free time, so that
great. Thank you so much. I am not about to have a lot of free time.
Of course. Welcome to Infodump, everybody, the show where Tor and I plan the podcast as we record it.
Yes.
Today's episode is focusing primarily on electric train transportation in North America, I guess, but also durian antibodies, I suppose.
Mm-hmm.
So, I mean, I guess, my opening question is, what's your familiarity with electric freight in the U.S.? What's your familiarity with it?
Electric freight in the U.S. is one of my favorite little railfan niches. It is so particular, so specific, and it is a font of rail-related curiosities. So for those of you listening who may not know, electric transportation for trains is pretty ubiquitous in Europe, in East Asia, in South Africa, and a handful of other countries. But in the US, it's very rare. Only in the Northeast is it common on the Amtrak's Northeast Corridor, and pretty much only for passenger trains.
Yeah.
There are various stretches of electrified commuter rail here and there in the rest of the country, in Chicago, in Denver, in the Bay Area, but there's almost no freight rail hauled by electric trains, hauled by electric locomotives in the United States. Every single railroad that uses electric engines to haul freight in the U.S. is in some way unique and weird in other ways, too. It is a font of... So the category of American electric freight rail is a font of truly weird little trains out in the middle of nowhere, little known even to rail fans. There's actually some of the railroads that we're going to be talking about in this episode have very little documentation on the internet, or we're talking about railroad cryptids, basically. I made an iceberg of American electric freight railroads. Yes, a while ago that referred to some really obscure ones. We're going to be talking about one in Colorado that had the longest tunnel in the United States for a while that was not well known to exist even in the railroading community. There were other much more widely used railroad tunnels that were referred to as the longest tunnel in the US because this one was just so obscure.
Yeah. It's weird because it's so obscure that even in preparation for this episode, I forgot about it.
Right.
Genuinely.
Oh, yeah.
That's hilarious. I think part of it, and this is kind of to get the ball rolling as to the history of electric freight transportation in the US. You mentioned tunnels, and that actually is where a lot of the first electrified railroads came from in the US, was because of long tunnels and fears about, crews and passengers asphyxiating on smoke and stuff, where it's hey, we're going to speed run the lung cancer any percent category by going through the Hoosick Tunnel, or, we can just, hey, let's electrify this thing sort of deal. So I think that the Hoosick Tunnel was the first. I might be incorrect about that.
Yeah, that's a 4-mile tunnel in Massachusetts, in western Massachusetts, near the border with New York, was the longest railroad tunnel in the world. I think when it was built, very old, 1840s, 1850s. It's that old, I think.
Yeah.
But yes, pretty long railroad tunnel in western Massachusetts, still in use. And yes, see, that's something interesting, that some of the first electric railroads in the world were in the U.S. because the U.S. was for a while the world's main center of railway construction and innovation. And there used to be a lot more electric hauled freight in the U.S., mainly because a lot of the railroads that were electrified because of long tunnels, and we've found better ways to ventilate those tunnels since.
Yeah, I think it's interesting because thinking about I'm going to bring up Southern Pacific later, but it's very interesting looking at that problem of tunnel ventilation, and basically SP's solution was hey, let's develop the cab forward engine. Cab forwards, for context,
those are so cool.
Yeah, I love them. They're literally steam engines that instead of the cab being behind the boiler, it's in front of the boiler, and that helps save crews from that any percent lung cancer speed run.
And so the smoke isn't, as they run the train, the smoke isn't coming back towards them. The smoke is behind.
Yeah. And so that's one solution, but a different solution that for example, the Boston and Maine or the Great Northern, basically we're hey, let's just kind of have two ends of this mountain pass and just kind of have our steam engines either be turned off or cut off and have electric engines transport them through. And I love the look of those early box cabs. They all look the same to me.
Yes. That's such a vibe.
Yeah, and I don't think there's any of those like really in service anymore. I think there's a few steeple cabs in service on the
Oh yes,
the
there
Iowa
are. We're
traction.
gonna talk about the Iowa
Yeah,
traction.
oh man, but there's none of the box cabs, I don't think, which is really sad. I don't know. They're very autistic looking trains. They're just like, hey, we're here. We've got a job to do.
Yeah, they get the job done.
Yeah, so I think like the teens and the 20s, there's not like that much additional electrification, but then like the big stuff starts to happen in the third. Like I guess no, actually, well, I guess like just throughout the early 1900s, you have the Pacific extension of the Milwaukee Road being built and then electrified.
Yeah,
you have the Great Northern.
That was for a while. I think the longest and most significant electrified railroad in the U.S. The Pacific extension of the Milwaukee Railroad ran from Minnesota through the Dakotas and Montana and Idaho out to Seattle.
Yeah.
Because of long tunnels and cheap hydropower and various other considerations, 2 long sections of it, each hundreds of miles long, were electrified. It was electrified until the 1970s. That was a very distinctive feature of it, that there were electric hauled long haul freight trains running through Montana and Washington State. And they had engines that were originally they had various cool, unique types of engines that have no real parallel anywhere else, because other than the Norfolk and Western, in the Appalachians, Norfolk and Western also had an electrified freight route as part of one of their main lines for a while. I don't know that much about the kinds of engines they used.
So there was
but
the
that
Virginian.
Also lasted in not Norfolk, Virginian.
I mean, the NNW bought them, but yeah, no, it's so high. Yeah, I know, it's a weird thing. Like I'm the least familiar with Southern railroads. That's always just been kind of my gap of knowledge in a lot of ways. And so for me, like I know that on the Virginian they had both box cabs and then like a kind of set of streamlined double-ended ones that kind of look like EP5s almost, like the New Haven EP5s. But the big ones that they got were what Penn Central later called E33s, which basically are like GE hood units. And a bunch of those got sent off to Penn Central after NNW de-electrified the line. And so like I don't remember exactly what the Virginian called them and stuff, but yeah, there was electrified, I think, from Newport News all the way into the coal fields. It just went from the tide flats out into the Appalachians, basically, which is fascinating.
And that was the other main electrified freight route in the U.S. But yeah, the Milwaukee Road Pacific Extension, that is one of the great things, along with like going to Hong Kong back when it was a British colony, or mainland China in the 80s when they were just starting to open up to the outside world. That is another one of the things that I really, really wish I could have been alive to see. Electric freight trains on the Milwaukee Pacific Extension. That was so unique. Yeah, they had these electric engines called bipolars because they could. Was it because they could run in either direction?
I don't remember exactly.
Yeah, I don't know why
maybe
they called them bipolar.
Yeah, maybe they just got diagnosed that way. Like I don't know. I mean, that's
and then the most famous engines that they had on the Milwaukee Road Pacific Extension were called Little Joes, because the Joe in question was Joseph Stalin. Mm-hmm. In the 1940s, during World War II, when the U.S. and USSR were briefly allies, some American who made the Little Joes, was it GE?
Oh, it was GE.
Yeah. GE was making electric locomotives for Russia, because that's a place where railroad electrification is commonplace. And then I think the story was, and correct me if I'm wrong, that then the war ended and all of a sudden the US and the Soviets were not allies anymore, and so they couldn't ship the engines to Russia. Well, who's going to buy them in the US? We don't have a lot of electrified trackage that would require these big, strong, long-haul freight engines. Only the Milwaukee Road could. And so they went to the Milwaukee Road. They called them Little Joe Stalin's engines, and that got shortened to Little Joe.
Yeah, so they were originally intended for Lend-Lease, I think, on the Trans-Siberian Railway, and which was like only partly electrified at that point, so I don't remember like what segment they were going to be like running that on. I mean, talk about like wanting to see, like, I would have loved to have seen the Trans-Siberian Railway like during World War II. Like, oh my god, to rail fan that would have been amazing. But so most of them ended up on the Milwaukee Road. 2 of them ended up on the Chicago South Shore in South Bend, actually, and 2 of them ended up in Brazil. So 2 of them are in Brazil. Yeah, so I think one of them still survives in Brazil, or maybe was scrapped recently. But yeah, there's one that's surviving at the Lake Shore Railway Museum in Erie, Pennsylvania, next to a like U-25B, which is my favorite diesel engine, not non-cowl diesel engine. I love the F-45 more, but yeah, and the rest of them were on the Milwaukee Road, and they served until 1973, I believe, in both electrified sections.
One of the things that killed the Milwaukee Road, so the 2 things that killed the Milwaukee Road were basically, so they had 2 main rivals, the Northern Pacific and the Great Northern, both of which also, actually not the Northern Pacific, but the Great Northern also had a few electrified segments early on because of their long tunnels, which they then just found better ways to ventilate their tunnels and de-electrified because it was time consuming it would be expensive to electrify the whole line, and it was time consuming to have to switch out the steam and later diesel engines for electrics for the long tunnels. So they just found better ways to ventilate the tunnels. But the Milwaukee Road, they kept their electrification for a long time, but also for basically the same reason, for interoperability with non-electrified railroads, because they didn't have batteries. Like, at this point in time, battery electric engines, I think people who don't know much about trains will picture electric trains as being like electric cars, that they get charged. Those do exist now, but they are only in the planning stages. Only now have we only recently invented batteries powerful enough to power a train. So electric trains the world over have to get their electric power from electric wires strung above the track.
Yes. And so so I mean, I guess we probably should have started out with the definition of like how even an electric train really works. But so you got catenary, so that's the big infrastructure.
And like diesel trains are technically electric as well. They just bring their generators along with them.
Yeah, exactly. It's always interesting thinking about the Milwaukee Road because, like, so I mean, I've done a lot of like fan fiction Bond stuff, like we talked about last episode. But I mean, for me, it's more like literal fan fiction in terms of thinking like, oh, what would happen if like this railroad like had it like survived, or this railroad had done like X, Y, and Z. And
I would love to do a Milwaukee Road alt hist.
I literally have started the planning stages at one point for doing a Milwaukee Road alt hist, specifically involving them. Because here's the thing, they had discontinued their electrification stuff right before the oil crisis started.
That's the other thing that killed them. I was going to say, the 2 things that killed them, the Great Northern and Northern Pacific, their 2 main rivals consolidated into the Burlington Northern, and then they made the decision to de-electrify for better interoperability with their non-electrified branches. Right when it just so happened the 1973 oil crisis hit, and briefly other railroads began considering electrification at that point.
Right after the Milwaukee Road had stopped. And it's so interesting because if they had not done that, and in the early 80s still, because the Milwaukee Road is always going to like not be able to survive on its own in the Pacific Northwest. It just didn't have the online customers for it. But there was a plan in the early 80s for the Grand Trunk and Western, which is my dad's favorite railroad. But there was a plan for the Grand Trunk to actually purchase the Milwaukee Road, but the Sioux Line wound up getting them. Yeah, and so like there was a whole thing where the Grand Trunk almost bought them, and so I have this like image in my mind of like Grand Trunk painted E60Cs, like the original 3-piece windshield models, like going over like the trestles and the cascades and stuff. Like that's talk about alt history. Like that's like crack to me.
Oh my god, me too. Oh my god. I mean, I like to imagine. I had an alt hist in mind where the Chicago and Northwestern sucked up the Milwaukee Road, which they did in real life, right? Later on, when they had abandoned the Pacific Extension and they were diminished to some lines in Minnesota and Wisconsin.
That was the Sioux Line, actually.
Okay,
The
it was the
Chicago
Sioux Line.
Northwestern
All right.
picked up a vast majority of the Rock Island.
That's what I'm thinking of, the Rock Island.
So, like, honest to God, if the UP had wound up picking up the Rock Island in the early 1960s like they were trying to, like, the railroad landscape would look completely different nowadays because, like, the UP wouldn't have gone after the Missouri Pacific. And, like, there's like, a whole lot of dominoes that, like, I would love to do an alt railroad history episode of this podcast with you because, Tor, I have so many ideas in that regard. Oh, my God.
Oh, my God. Okay, yes, we got to talk about this at some point.
What's funny about this especially is that, like, what this sounds like is that, like, you know, especially with alt history for, like, railroad companies, it's, like, in essence, corporate fan fiction, but, like, It's not that. I swear we're not shilling for these corporate entities or whatever. They just look cool, and I like it when maps fit together, you know, like, it's a very satisfying...
I mean, yeah, you're gonna be... being a fan of something... requires being a fan... being a fan of something corporate at some point. Yes,
exactly. It is interesting, you know, like there's no indie railroads. I mean, there's short lines and stuff, obviously, but like for the big ones especially, like you're you know, they're all companies, and so like I it's always something that I've always been like a little bit like, oh, this is like, it's interesting that like I care this much about a company that I'm not invested in, but like I'm emotionally invested in this stuff. Like I care about the rail industry a lot.
Absolutely.
It's my special interest, one could say. So so the Milwaukee Road's the big one out west. The Virginian's a smaller player out east, but the big player out east is the Pennsylvania.
Oh yes, the Pennsylvania, who are the only railroad giant who electrified and did not de-electrify. The Amtrak Northeast Corridor between DC and Boston with electrified, bunch of other electrified commuter rail branches in New Jersey and stuff, and in Pennsylvania. That was built by the Pennsylvania Railroad, and that is still all electrified, but only some stretches of the line even have freight trains on them, and those freight trains run under diesel power.
Yes, it was interesting because I have a video on my channel from this trip from last year when I went up to the Northeast Corridor to like just kind of film things the way that they were and stuff. So at Havre de Grace, Maryland, right across the Susquehanna, Susquehanna, there it is. There's a old Pennsylvania Railroad branch line that goes off between Havre de Grace and Harrisburg called the Port Road, and that also used to be electrified, but then they de-energized that in the 80s. The only trains that operate over that nowadays are coal trains to the Port of Baltimore, and so literally when I showed up to Havre de Grace, it was like 105 degrees outside when I showed up there.
When was that?
This was last July. So it was actually
I was right around there in June, like not long before that, like right before I went to Philly to film the video with Classy Whale.
Right.
During that insane East Coast heat wave, I had just been at Vibe Camp, which is this festival kind of like Burning Man in Maryland, like really close to Havre de Grace.
Really?
Yeah.
That's fascinating. Man, we keep almost intersecting
right?
with each
other.
One of these days. So it was so fucking hot that I was like, okay, I need to just like stay inside. I'm meeting these like friends that I've known for like about 9 years at that point, like for the first time in person. I'm like, I'm not meeting them while I am drenched in sweat, like sitting like next to this giant bridge over over the Susquehanna. And so we go to the Havre de Grace Duck Decoy Museum, which is like
nice.
I don't know if you've ever been, but
I have not.
It's really good. It's really good. I like to think, because like obviously like the default special interest now that often people talk about is transportation based, where it's like, oh, you're into trains, oh, you're into planes, or you're into buses or whatever. I was like thinking about like what did people do with special interests like before transportation stuff, and it's like, oh, this sort of thing, artisanal crafts like duck decoys and all that stuff.
I mean, the answer that I always like to give is calendars, because like people are like, what? Because people have asked, the subject has come up in conversation among my friends and family just randomly a couple times, like, how did prehistoric societies know that there were 365 days in the year? Who was taking notes of the length of the day every day of the year? Like, how did the people who built Stonehenge know that day know to align it with the winter solstice such that they knew which day was the winter solstice. Like, it's one thing to build a monument that the sun shines through on the winter solstice. Like, sure, you can, like, sure, as long as you have a straight edge and a crew of workers, you can do that. Another thing is people at that level of technology knowing exactly which day is the shortest and longest of the year. And my answer is they didn't have trains yet, so what else were the autistic people doing?
It's like, I mean, what else do you expect them to do at that point? I mean, like, it's I do love that. Like, there's a degree of, this is one of the things that I love about like autism in general, is that there's so much like enrichment that comes from people siloing themselves so deeply into their special interest. And then like, just as society expands and more people and more autistic people exist, like the world is enriched for each of those special interests. I think about the Corbin Blue guy in that way.
The Corbin Blue guy.
Like there's just millions of Corbin Blue guys out there.
Absolutely, yes. And like, centuries in the past, the Corbin Blue guy would have been like an imam at the House of Wisdom and like write extensive commentary on the hadiths or something. Sequester himself away in his, in his cloisters. Or
so now we could say that furry artists specializing in one very particular like kind of drawing are just modern day imams in essence. Man, that's gonna give I don't know if I should
think about think about Saint Thorlak. That's the other thing. That's the other thing that autistic people were into before systems like trains and computers and the stereotypical special interests were a common thing. The systems that they would memorize and be fascinated by, natural ones like calendars and like religious systems, medieval monks. A lot of them would probably meet today's criteria for autism.
Oh yeah, it's like that Onion video a while ago. It's just like autistic reporter enraptured by prison system. And it's like it's that, but it's like a ye olde autistic reporter enraptured by monastery. No, I love that. So the Pennsylvania. So I'm over in the Havre de Grace Duck Decoy Museum, and it like finally cools off because it's about to start like pouring down rain. Like I'm like just torrential flooding. And so I like leave my friends in the museum. I'm like, hey, I'm gonna go like film some Macellas because there's a couple that are coming soon, like that sort of deal, because I want to get those videos of this bridge. And the first train that I hear is the Norfolk Southern coal train off of the Port Road, and it's like a once a day thing. And I was just like, okay, cool. That just happens often for me. I get very lucky in that regard. But it reminds me of like back in the 70s, especially like back then, you could see like electrified freight trains, like Conrail painted, like Conrail freight trains operating on a freight only corridor between, like Harrisburg and Perryville, where it enters the Northeast corridor.
Oh, yeah, some of the GG1s were used to pull freight trains until like the 80s, I think.
Yep. Exactly. So yeah, there was literal like Pennsylvania gold striped GG1s with Conrail patches, and that shit. I mean, I've seen pictures of those, and like I don't know, there's something about like a Pennsylvania unit and a Conrail patch that just like it tickles me in ways that I adore. We should mention the GG1 actually. It's the most famous of the Pennsylvania electrified units for sure, but it's actually not the only one with that body styling, which I've always found very interesting. Did you know about the P5 modifieds? Have you seen those before?
Oh, tell me about the P5 modifieds.
So P5s are like the Pennsylvania's standard freight units from the, I think, like late 20s through the early 60s when they were replaced by the E44s. The first, like, I want to say like 60 of them were box cabs. But then after there was a head-on collision, Pennsylvania basically was like, hey, we need to redesign them. We're going to contact Raymond Loewy, and who's the guy who designed the Coke bottle, like that guy.
I don't think I think that's a myth. I was on the Wikipedia list of common misconceptions the other day, and that's on there. I was like I know Raymond Loewy designed the GG1s. I know that he designed what else did he design then? Like, he is seen as the yes, because like I knew that I knew that he was credited with designing the the iconic form of the Coke bottle. He is the guy who introduced he's synonymous with like Art Deco streamlining.
Right, exactly. That's fascinating.
Yeah, he designed F units and E units, I think, right?
I think the paint schemes on them. I don't know if he designed the specific bulldog nose. I know he designed, if I remember correctly, he designed the Baldwin sharks.
Yes.
So he designed the shark noses. Which, like, that's a whole other god. I mean, I've talked about before, like, I've made that as an episode suggestion for you. Talk about train cryptids, the RF-16s
the Baldwin
of
shark
Escanaba.
noses. You bet I'm going to make a video someday about the Baldwin shark noses, yes.
God, I want to, like, honest to God, if you ever
there's going to
manage
be a
to get
main
up...
channel video about the Baldwin shark noses. This has mass appeal. The story of that, you're going to hear it eventually.
Okay, good. I will see what magic I can get to potentially get us into Escanaba and get some video for you there.
Thank you. Oh my God.
So the interesting thing about that is, like Raymond Loewy, I think if he did actually design the GG1, then he didn't actually design the GG1 necessarily, or if he did, like then the styling of it was copied from the P5, and I don't know if he specifically did. So the P5s are basically take like a box cab and slap a GG1 shell on top of it. And like they look really weird. Like they look actually really weird. They're called P5A modified Pennsylvania Railroad. That's it really feels like some Mandela effect shit looking at them.
Yeah. Trains I see in dreams kind of thing.
No, honestly, it's like asking a like Claude or something to like dream up a dream up like a Pennsylvania Railroad looking thing, and it like just doesn't look correct, you know?
Yeah.
Or like it's even like a Lionel looking. It's more Lionel looking than a GG1 is, honestly.
Yeah.
Which there's a whole So those come out first, and then the GG1s come out later. But during the 40s and 50s, I'm gonna toss, or you can look this up specifically. There's this like trial run that Pennsylvania does for cab units, electrified cab units, which are very interesting. Kind of the only ones ever really made that are 4 axles or otherwise. There's like cab units that obviously the little Joes have like bulldog noses and stuff. There's actually only one. So this is an interesting story. There's only out of all the little Joes, they all have like a GE designed bulldog nose, except for one that was wrecked, and so the Milwaukee Road replaced it with an F unit style cab, like an F unit style cab, and chrome grills on the side of it, which is freaking awesome. I love that shit.
Send me a photo of that.
Yeah, I'll find it. I have like a whole folder full of photos I'm going to toss you after this for use in there. I'm trying to help in that regard. But during the 40s, there's this like competition that Pennsylvania has for. I'll actually toss this to you on Discord. Oh my God, I have your contact information.
Yes, you do.
Everybody sign up for the Tours Cabinet Patreon and join the Discord.
The link is in the description.
Yeah, so the tossed it to you. So they have this competition for these E2Bs, E3Cs, and E3Bs, which are sounds like a bit of a tongue twister, but they are these like cab unit electrified.
Whoa.
Like
yeah, it looks like an Alco PA.
Yeah, literally looks like
you don't have the pantographs aren't up, but like I would, if you hadn't described these to me, I would not know that these engines are electric in this photo.
Yeah, exactly. The other cool thing is, speaking about like Raymond Loewy, there's 2 of them specifically, and I'm going to toss these 2 as well. This is the E3C and the E3B. One of them is a 6-axle locomotive, and the bottom is I think it's got 3 trucks, so that 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, a 12-axle locomotive. And so those 2 are designed by Raymond Loewy, so that like shark nose sort of look there. So it's interesting, right? Like he, apparently if Raymond Loewy actually is a charlatan and didn't design the Coke bottle, he at least designed some pretty cool engines.
No, he designed some cool shit. Yeah, absolutely. I don't know if he ever took credit for the Coke bottle.
Did he ever?
Yes, no, I don't think he ever did. I think that's just something that popular culture slapped him with because He is,
Okay.
to people in the know, he is the defining Art Deco
Right.
industrial designer, and
Right.
most Americans don't know what a Pennsylvania Railroad GG1 is.
Exactly. Yeah. I'm not anymore. I mean, I would say, especially with the popularity of Lionel in the 50s and 60s, like probably a lot of.
Yeah, I think like in the 1960s, like even if they didn't know that it's called a GG1, yes, I think a majority of Americans would be like, I know what that train is. Yes.
Actually, I'm thinking, with the popularity of American Flyers specifically, I actually think that the EP5 would have been more like well known than the GG1. The EP5, right? The New Haven cab unit electric. Have you seen that before? Yeah. Like that was the stereotypical like electric American train for a while. So like I almost feel like the EP5 would have been more popular. But also I had the thought of like in essence, people assigned credit to him afterwards, just assuming that this is something that he did.
Yeah,
it's the design equivalent of Ted Cruz's The Zodiac Killer in essence.
That was a good meme.
I used to do this program called Odyssey of the Mind when I was younger, and I was a judge at their World Finals about a decade ago now, and there was this team from Corbin, Kentucky, who came up on stage, and there's at the start of every Odyssey.
Where I am in
exactly
Tennessee,
yeah. Good old Louisville Nashville Division Point.
Yep.
Yeah.
By the way, there's an actual town called Rocky Top. You know the song
Really?
Rocky Top?
No,
Wish that I was on Rocky Top. It's sort of the national anthem of Appalachia. Rocky Top will always be home sweet home to me. Good old Rocky Top. Woo! Rocky Top, Tennessee. And like I knew that song even through the history of American music, even before I met London, who is from the very part of Tennessee that the song is from. But we would drive around. Yeah, when I first went to Tennessee with her, we would drive around and listen to that song. And she said, at one point, I said, we should go to Rocky Top. And, just see what there is to see, and she was like, "It's not a real place. It's a fictional. It's fictional place created by the writers of this song."
Yeah, it's like Kokomo.
It's like it's like
it's
Kokomo,
like it's off the Florida Keys. What do you mean off the Florida Keys? Do you mean Cuba?
Yeah.
Like what are you talking about?
Yes, Rocky Top, Tennessee. Yeah, exactly. Like idyllic, stereotypical Appalachian town in the middle of nowhere. And then I was like, no, I'm pretty sure that I have seen a town called Rocky Top on maps of this area. I'm pretty sure that exists. And I looked it up, and yes, it exists. Yes, there is a town called Rocky Top. However, it was renamed Rocky Top like 10 years ago in order to claim, after the song, order to claim that it was the original Rocky Top.
That makes sense. That is wow. Okay.
Anyway, there's a team from Corbin, Kentucky.
Yeah. Oh, yeah. And so, like at the beginning of every Odyssey play, there's like this in essence, like, because it's a judged thing. So it's like, judges, are you ready? And then there's like a canned line that all the judges say. But then the timekeeper, who was me, like asked the team, like, team, are you ready? And in unison, I have never experienced this before or since, because I mean, I dissociate all the time, but like I really had a full body dissociative experience at this. In unison, this team of like 5 high school students from Corbin, Kentucky said in unison, Ted Cruz is the Zodiac Killer. And that was the theme of their play. It was not related to the prompt whatsoever.
That.
It was delightful. It's like, yeah, man, it's 2016. Like we could have fun with that stuff. So the Pennsylvania. So they electrify between what is it? It's Crystal City, but Arlington. They electrify between Potomac Yard in Arlington, Virginia, and New York City. Mm-hmm. And so then from there, the New York, New Haven, and Hartford, or the New Haven is basically between. I mean, where does the New Haven's electrification end in Connecticut? Is
in
it like...
New Haven, and then
really?
I think, and then Amtrak extended the electrification to Boston in the 80s or 90s. I think it was like the late 90s, early 2000s or something.
So
like when they were starting up the Acela.
Yeah, I think so. I have a friend who like works for maintenance on the Northeast Corridor, and she's gonna get mad at me for not knowing the states specifically. I'm so sorry, Rail, but like I think it was the early 2000s when it finally got electrified all the way. But up until then, like you had. So, like, here's the interesting thing. So, in the U.S., like, we associate passenger rail with electrification. Mm-hmm. But, like, you know, like if you as a private company were investing a bunch of money into electrification and not really getting a lot of government help, like, you know, the feds helped out with the Pennsylvania electrification. I'm not sure how much they did for the rest of the projects that we've covered so far. You got to get some return on investment. And so, like, you know, doing freight, which is much more profitable than
passenger rail has never really been
No.
profitable. Even in the Gilded Age, when the railroads were the most profitable corporations the world had ever seen, the passenger trains were mostly loss leaders to advertise the freight service.
Yeah, exactly. It's I don't even know like what could be an equivalent of that nowadays in terms of like you having such a like or a company having like such a significant portion of their money going into something that is never going to turn a profit.
Yeah, I mean, everyone's talking,
Okay.
everyone's making comparisons between the Gilded Age railroad boom and the AI boom now.
Yeah.
I think like the public facing like chatbots that the AI companies are putting out, like those, there is no way for those to make a profit. The money in AI comes from automating code and pretty much just that.
Yeah, and like defense application stuff and like, you know, like, and so it's like, I guess that is kind of another instance in which like, you know, there's a really good like Sean Munger video that kind of goes into those comparisons, but I don't think that specifically is touched on. But I actually do think that that's a really interesting like comparison, because it's like, okay, like these are the things that everybody is using, but it's not the things that's making people money, because these end users are not the goal. Industry is the goal.
Exactly.
Fascinating. Yeah, I didn't even think about it that way. So yeah, so like you get like freight railroads in the Northeast that are, you know, using their own infrastructure, but like once Amtrak takes over and eventually purchases the Northeast corridor, you know, like freight stuff is like winding down, and there's this interesting push that happens in the late 1970s. And we'll kind of get to the Western electric railroads in a minute, but I do want to focus on the Northeast.
I can't wait to get to those, because those are the really interesting
ones. Those are the good ones. I think we kind of want to get like a good like kind of ground rule as to like where things are at. I do want to say, because like I'm looking at the map in my head right now. I know the Iowa traction is going to be mentioned. I think interurban freight is going to be kind of its own thing in a lot of ways. Like, I don't necessarily consider the Iowa traction to be kind of like fitting in with the rest of these. Like, I want to mention
it is unique compared to these other unique railroads. Yeah.
Yeah, exactly. It's bespoke, and it's the last interurban freight railroad in the United States. I consider interurban and heavy electric to be completely different categories personally.
Sure. Although in the present day, they're less so, because like the interurbans. So interurbans, for those of you not aware, were streetcars that ran between cities, or often between small towns, interurban, between cities. So they were like small scale urban transit that was not, in the days before cars, was not necessarily just for getting around cities. There was basically a rural streetcar network that spanned the entire eastern half of the United States. It was said, while nobody, actually I think like some journalist maybe did this to like demonstrate the sheer size of the interurban network, but it was said that you could ride local streetcar transit from the East Coast all the way to Chicago.
I think
in
it was
like
specifically
1920.
Yeah, it's like it was like Maine to Wisconsin.
Yes,
I think specifically.
Yes, Maine. From Maine to Wisconsin, you could doing like 10-mile hops on little regional interurban lines. You could ride interurbans as opposed to long-haul mainline trains the whole way across. Like, I guess like the equivalent today would be like riding local buses instead of a Greyhound bus across the eastern U.S. Like, nobody would do that to get from point A to point B, but but the idea that you could do it is enticing, I guess. And
talk about
very few interurbans survive, but a few of them gradually morphed into modern day commuter trains, like the South Shore line in Illinois and Indiana. It goes from Chicago to South Bend. That is now an electrified commuter rail line. It's the only electrified passenger line in the Midwest, I think, other than the Metra Electric, which shares some of the same tracks.
Yes. Yeah.
And yes, some people still call it an interurban, like, the last interurban, the 21st century interurban. It's a commuter rail line, and it shares more in common with, like, the SEPTA or New Jersey Transit electrified commuter lines on the East Coast, or, like, the Denver electrified commuter rail lines.
Yeah, the RTD.
Yeah, than it does with historic interurbans. But yeah, sometimes interurbans carried freight as well. And the South Shore was no exception. You mentioned the South Shore had the Little Joe, got a couple Little Joes. I didn't remember that, but I was reminded of that. I can definitely picture a Little Joe in South Shore colors. That lasted until, like, not too long ago, I think.
It was, I believe, 1982 when they were taken over, I think. So they divested the freight holdings, I think, in the early 80s, and then purchased a bunch of Jeep 38-2s, and then they still have those.
Yeah,
and they also have,
there
like,
are
some
still
other...
freight trains running under the wires on the South Shore line. But again, for interoperability with the national freight network, they use diesels.
Yep, exactly. So to this day, the Iowa Traction is the only one of these interurbans that still doesn't do any passenger service, but it's a tiny little, electric interurban railroad in central Iowa. Talk about Odyssey of the Mind. Like, I used to go to the World Finals out in Ames, Iowa, at Iowa State University for, a number of years, close to a decade. And, I never once actually... I went up to go visit the Iowa Traction, but I really do want to at some point in the near future. But yeah, it's just a really cool little switching line.
I was in Dubuque for a few months working on the Harris campaign in the fall of 24, and I did consider going out and seeing the Iowa Traction, but I never had time.
Yeah. Did you ever get to the tunnel in East Dubuque?
Yes. Yes, I did. I nearly got arrested for trespassing around there. Yes.
Yeah, I'm not surprised. I've wanted to do it, and I just have that white woman audacity in me to just kind of trespass wherever. And when it comes to rail fending stuff, I've never done anything super illegal or anything like that. But oftentimes when I get caught, I'll just be like, oh, I'm sorry, I didn't know that I was here. And genuinely, I typically don't understand that I'm actually doing a thing. And so I've always wanted to kind of use that to go to that tunnel and be like, oh, cool. This is really cool. But then the bridge 10, there's security cameras there now. I think that's what got me caught. I think my theory is that the cop was worried that I was going to jump off the bridge there and was relieved that he wouldn't have to talk me down from doing that. But exactly.
Let me off without anything happening.
It's no, I'm not here to jump. I'm here to observe with my eyes.
I like trains.
Basically. I like trains. It's fine. Don't worry about it. God, that's really funny. That is kind of the universal sort of excuses. I've had my fair number of run-ins with cops over the years, while out rail fanning, and being called a terrorist in the early 2000s for just taking photos of trains.
I've heard about how insane that was for the years after 9/11. For a while, people were getting arrested for taking photos of railroads because it was seen as potentially plotting a terrorist attack. Yeah.
To this day, you cannot take pictures of Port Authority Trans-Hudson trains on station platforms that they serve. They will take your cameras. They are very aggressive about that.
I'm right by the path right here. Right now I happen to be. You will see this in a few days on Patreon, and in a week actually at the time that this releases, you will see this video publicly in a few days, and it's already on Patreon.
Right.
This one regular channel video about Japanese sorcerers who said that they were Christians, and basically in the sense of an edgy teenager saying they're a Satanist, didn't really understand anything about Christianity. That episode was filmed, or at the point that we are recording this, is going to be filmed in a couple hours in my friend's apartment in Jersey City, where I'm staying right now while I'm in New York. While I'm back in New York for a week. And the path is it's literally a block away. It is it's even more squalid than the main New York subway. The path really is just fabulously janky. I posted a photo on my Twitter of just an absurd number of wiring conduits in the
Yeah.
Christopher Street Path Station in Greenwich Village. Like,
Oh,
it
God.
looks like a pipe organ.
You should take an actual camera there, or set up a tripod, see what happens.
I should test them.
You should test them. Any percent path arrest.
Yes,
speed
yeah,
run.
getting arrested on the path. Yes.
Yeah, exactly. So yeah, there's oh, what was I? Oh yeah. So during the 70s, like, there's this paring down of electric or just freight operation on the corridor in general. It's first kind of restricted to in the evening and at night. And then, like this has like Amtrak and like the local, like, this is at that point, it wasn't NJ Transit, it was New Jersey Department of Transportation trains, which I don't know if you've seen like the kind of bluebird paint scheme that they have.
Yeah. Sorry. London's trying to get my attention.
Oh,
Yep.
Oh, sorry. Oh, I'm sorry. My eyes were on the.
Yeah. I'm recording the Infodump podcast. I love you.
I love you so
No, it's all right. What do you have to say?
name?
Okay. Sure.
Sorry.
Oh.
I love you. Sorry.
Hi, bye,
Who are you
London.
talking to?
I'm talking to Casey.
Oh my gosh.
Hi.
Hello. Sorry. Hi.
Hi.
Sorry. Okay. I'm gonna let you guys. I'm sorry. I'm gonna let you guys go. Okay.
Thank you. Yes. London showed me like literal like 50s housewife meme about how I'm her breadwinner.
That's
and
really
I
funny.
love it. Yes, that's true love.
I love that. Okay, so in the 70s, there's like this paring down of electrification that's starting. So like first Amtrak kind of is like, hey, you can't like, run trains on the corridor that are freights like during the day. Like you have to do it in the evening and night and stuff. But like Conrail still's interested in like running freights like on the corridor. And so General Motors like gets these two prototype engines, the GM5B and the GM6C. Have you seen these before?
No. Okay. Send me photos.
Yeah. So I'm gonna grab this for you. It is a weird engine. We talk about train cryptids. This is kind of in the same line as the like the Baldwin E3B from earlier. And so like I first saw this. I have a video on my channel. Of course I have a channel, but I have a video on my channel that's talking about like the soundtrack for this railroad called Conrail's Beginning, which is like a not railroad, but this railroad VHS tape called Conrail's Beginning, which is my favorite VHS tape of all time. I adore it. I love the soundtrack for it. It's a whole thing. But there's a scene in it that's showing specifically EMD 1975, which is the GM6C prototype.
I'm looking at these. These remind me a little bit. If there's one thing that I've seen before that looks like this, it's the electric engines on one very particular electrified freight railroad in the U.S. that I think we're hopefully going to talk about later.
I mean, which one? That's actually, I'm curious.
The Muskingum Electric Railroad in Ohio.
Yeah. Well, let's hop into it then. First automated railroad ever, basically.
Yeah,
right?
that's another really, almost every single, this is what I'm saying, almost every single electrified freight railroad in the U.S. is fabulously unique in some other bizarre way as well. Like, so electrified freight railroads, as we have exhaustively documented, used to be a lot more common in the U.S. in like the mid-century, mid-20th century. There were three main electrified freight lines, all of which I think carried both passengers and freight under electric locomotives. The Milwaukee Railroad Pacific Extension in the like upper Great Plains and Pacific Northwest, the Virginian in Appalachia and the Virginia Tidewater area, and the Pennsylvania in the Northeast.
Yep.
The first two de-electrified and in the case of the Milwaukee Road was abandoned. In the case of the Virginian, just de-electrified and got sucked up by a chain of larger railroads and and de-electrified for better interoperability with the rest of the system. The Pennsylvania is still electrified as run by Amtrak and New Jersey Transit and SEPTA, but does not run freight trains anymore.
Yes. And so
then that leaves 80s, us with a handful of really weird little railroads still running freight under electric power, most of which are also defunct by this point. Like there's only I think there are only two, still running right now in 2026, only two companies still running freight trains with electric engines in the U.S. The Deseret Power Railway in Utah and the Iowa Traction.
Yes. And that's like, and I want to make the distinction of mainline catenary powered electric like freight railroads, because there is like the Pacific Harbor Line was testing a battery engine, but that's been scrapped apparently.
Oh, it has?
Which is fascinating.
Huh.
Yeah, apparently it's been scrapped. I don't know what the heck was going on with that. Yeah, I don't understand. And then there's also the Coatesville, Pennsylvania, like the slave units in Coatesville, Pennsylvania that I showed you a while ago, that are like remote engines that are on that like little quarter-mile section of catenary.
Yes.
So technically, but like, yeah, in terms of mainline stuff, it's just those two. So there's this whole crop of like industrial, specifically mining railways that are electrified at this point, that kind of crop into existence at this point. So you mentioned Deseret, you mentioned the Muskingum. There's also the Black Mesa and Lake Powell.
The longest of these. Yes, so this was, for a while, a whole category of electrified freight railroads that sprung into existence, from like the 1970s through 2010s. There were several of these scattered across the American West, especially in the Southwest, all of which had common features. They were newly built lines that never ran any passenger trains at all, exclusively ran coal trains, did not have any direct connection to the national rail system, so they had that reason to not necessarily be, they didn't need to be interoperable with any line because there were no other railroads anywhere nearby, and they exclusively had the purpose of taking coal from a mine to a power plant. And since there was a power plant there, they had a good source of electricity, so it made sense for these isolated little railroads to be electric. There were several of these, most of which are gone as coal power plants have become decommissioned, which I guess is a good thing. But it robbed us of a bunch of really fun little railroads. There was the Black Mesa and Lake Powell in northern Arizona, which was the longest, ran for like 90 miles or something.
I think it's 78 specifically, but a long distance.
A long distance for these railroads, most of which were very short. There was one in New Mexico near the Four Corners.
The Navajo Power.
The Navajo Power, yes, which I think still runs but de-electrified.
Yes, so that's an interesting one. So I will make the aside to say, and I only found this out recently, it started out as non-electrified.
Oh, really?
It actually started out exclusively using ex-Wabash C425s, like Alco C425s.
Okay, I knew that it
power.
used Alco C425s in an interesting way. I didn't know that those were actually its power originally.
Yes, that was its original power, and then it bought some ex-Amtrak E60s in the early 80s and was like, hey, let's just like turn these into freight engines and electrify. And then they de-electrified in, I think, 2017.
Got some cool new diesels with a Santa Fe inspired color scheme.
Yeah, and then so there's those two. Then there's the Deseret Power, like you mentioned, up in
that's
Utah.
Still running.
Yes, and I just visited there last September. I have a few videos of that trip on my channel. Texas Utilities, which originally ran with E25Cs, which are very interesting looking engines. I'll toss this to you. That's
one of the ones that is so obscure. There are very few photos of it online. We're down at the frigid bottom of the iceberg. The Candle Cove or Ready and Steady of the railroad world.
Yeah, absolutely. And then there's the Muskingum Electric, which is the one that you mentioned with had an E50C and it was completely automated. That was in Ohio, but the rest of them are out in the western section of the United States. And there's there was one more that operated that was non-electrified and did intersect with the rest of the rail network, and that was the Escalante Western, but it was also operated by Western Fuels, so it kind of fits in that category, but it doesn't have doesn't have electric power. Speaking of fan fiction bonds, I have a whole like alt history thing where they did electrify that and then use that as a basis for a railroad going up into the Four Corners region that connected with the Navajo power. It's all like a little like I have like a whole regional railroad thing set up in my mind about like
fun.
It's like a deregulated regional railroad of like like a Wisconsin Central of the Four Corners basically.
Nice.
It's good stuff. But I'll have to send you like a picture of one of those units I made a while ago.
Yeah, it's like how in the American map of Ticket to Ride, there's a direct railroad track. One of the tracks that you can build is directly across the Four Corners from Denver to Phoenix, which is one of the few railroad sections in the Ticket to Ride map that has never existed in real life.
Yeah, it's unfortunate. I mean, the area is gorgeous. I was wanting to visit there in February before, like, I just wasn't able to this year and stuff. But like, I do genuinely want to get out there and just like getting pictures of the Navajo power, because again, these are cryptids. Like, these are a large portion of the reason why it's so difficult to get photos of these things is that like they are operating not only in extremely remote territory, like thinking about like to get out to the Black Mesa and Lake Powell, I literally had to drive through the fundamentalist Latter-day Church of Jesus Christ.
Oh, tell me about this. Yes.
Yeah,
in my
so
first episode to go viral, the one about fake towns in Utah, I briefly touched on the Fundamentalist Church of Latter-day Saints, a Mormon offshoot who broke off from them when they abolished polygamy in order to get Utah statehood in the 1890s.
Yep.
They continue to believe that a man has to have 3 wives in order to enter the kingdom of heaven. They had their cult compound on the Utah-Arizona border. 2 towns, Colorado City and Hilldale, were pretty much completely controlled by this fundamentalist Mormon cult for decades until the 2010s, when their grip began to break.
Yeah, so I have kind of 2 intersections with the FLDS, both in terms of like having passed through the Twin Towns a couple of times to get out to Page, Arizona, which is where the Black Mesa is headquartered. But the first one was in 2017. I was working for a state senator in Southern California, and my last day in the office, we actually got a letter from Lyle Jeffs, who is like Warren Jeffs' brother. And it was specifically because at that point he had been imprisoned in Texas for, like some really horrific shit. But his brother, Lyle, was like, hey, like this cult leader who is my brother, like he actually deserves to be freed because he predicted the meteorite that hit like Siberia, I think, just like a few weeks prior at that point.
Meteorite?
Yeah, that one.
When was that?
2017.
That was 2017? I feel like that was further, more distant. I remember hearing about that in the news. I feel like I was younger at that point. I feel like it was like 2012, 2013. Either way. Yeah,
I'm not sure.
Whatever.
But yeah, I mean, he was referring to that
Either
one
way, he was
specifically.
claiming that he had... Yes, Lyle Jeffs was claiming that Warren Jeffs, the infamous leader of the FLDS church, who was in jail for a litany of horrific crimes.
Yeah.
Yes, had predicted a meteorite that landed in Siberia. And was sending a message to the state senator in California that you worked for.
Yeah, so like the idea was like he had predicted this meteor because God wanted to send Vladimir Putin like a message to basically chill out.
Okay.
Like that's in essence what it was. It was just like, God's like, hey,
God, I'd consider doing something like that.
Yeah, it's like, I mean, I've seen like so much like Putin is done content online where it's just like I've never had a cult leader tell me that, like in 2017 he was saying God says Putin is done. That is a William Spaniel reference for anybody who watches that channel. But I think so that was my first intersection with him. And so then obviously 2 years passed and my dad and I find out that like, hey, the Black Mesa Lake Powell is going to be shutting down because just, the coal plant was shutting down and there was some chicanery with like how that wound up happening and like just some bullshit, honestly. Like a lot of people lost their jobs because of that, because it shut down in essence to avoid having to like upgrade its scrubbing technology. So like it could have actually burned a little bit cleaner and they were just like, no, we're not going to do it. And so like I think it's like almost 300 people lost their jobs or something, which is like that is the unfortunate part, about a lot of the shutdown of coal plants is that like if you rely on that for your income, especially
that
for
was the industry in Page, Arizona.
Yes, it's that, or you go to slot canyons to get.
I think this might still be true because I'm pretty sure it's still there and hasn't been torn down. I think the smokestacks from that coal plant were the tallest buildings in Arizona.
Really? I actually didn't know that. That's fascinating. I don't know if they might have gotten torn down by this point, but like I don't remember that. Yeah, I really wish I'd like filmed more of the infrastructure, but I was very distracted on that trip. So yeah, so so my second intersection with the cult is like I'm actually driving with my dad through the Twin Towns, and I've been introduced to them at this point. Like I've always had a very strong fascination with the Mormon Church, like living near the termination of the Mormon Trail in Southern California. Like you know, you kind of you know a lot of Mormons. Like I've always had a fascination with the LDS as an organization, and
absolutely same.
Yeah, had a lot of friends who were Mormon. You know, like my
I feel
best
like
friend.
I attract. Yeah, I have never lived in a place with a lot of Mormons, but I just feel like I attract quirky, creative people who grew up Mormon. Like the most truly free-thinking people that I know. Most truly original, smart, independently thinking people that I know have the same story regardless of other details of who they are and what they're like, that they were raised Mormon, don't believe in don't believe in actual Mormon doctrine anymore, but also don't hate the Mormons and credit their Mormon upbringing with being part of who they are.
Right, exactly. I mean, it's you know, like I mean, like you said in your Deseret video, it's like that pioneering spirit, right? Like there's that element of just like you got just that go get it sort of mentality that I've always appreciated too. Like my best friend was a Mormon for about 3 months. There's a whole story there.
Yes, that sounds like one.
Yeah. But it's like one of those things where it's like, you know, I trap and do attract Mormons into my life sort of deal. But so like I've always been like fascinated with the
yes, that is a
yeah.
That's a good sign, you know. People who people who attract Mormons like sugar attracts ants are good people.
What's my favorite food? Grilled Mormons. You've ever seen
oh my god, I
on...
know that. I understood that reference.
Takeshi's challenge.
John. Oh my god.
I need to do like a menu specifically that's like, because I do a lot of stickers and buttons for like local vending things up here, and I need to do like a sticker that's like for sale grilled Mormons and like just like specific. God, I love. Anyways, so. Yeah, so like I've known about the FLDS for a while, and it was a fascination of mine like when I was younger, and so I'm like driving through this town, and my dad's like, we should stop for gas here. I'm like, no, let's not. I'd prefer not to actually. And it's weird. Like I've been in Amish territory in Indiana and stuff, and like seeing people in prairie dresses and like old fashioned clothing and stuff is normal.
I spent 3 days in Lancaster, Pennsylvania a month or so ago, and like
that's smorgasbord.
Smorgasbord.
Buffet.
Yes. That's a lovely place.
Fast casual heaven.
You see that, exactly. Yeah, you see the Amish people going around. Like London and I even went to the mall in Lancaster, and there were like some Amish teenagers there, like who knows what they were buying at the mall, but London says she overheard them talking to each other in this really distinctive weird accent, which makes sense. Like they a lot of them in their communities still speak like 16th century German. I think. I love that. Pennsylvania Dutch, which is its own whole German dialect. I mentioned that in the Corbin Bleu video, that's one of the languages you can learn about Corbin Bleu in. Like there's a Wikipedia in Pennsylvania Dutch, the language of the Amish. Who edits that?
Amish
Man,
Corbin
I don't
Bleu.
know.
Hey, I want to see Amish Corbin Bleu, honestly. That'd be kind of amazing, honestly.
Yeah.
Like an Amish production of High School Musical would kind of go so hard.
It would go
like I don't know.
So
hard. That'd be incredible. So like I'm used to seeing that sort of like dress and stuff and be like, oh, okay, let's just like but like I've never been in an environment where like seeing people dressed like that just like gives me like such like unease, where I'm just like, this is Amish tone tag negative. Like this is really like I don't know, like I'm kind of I genuinely did not want to get out of my car, and we didn't, thankfully. We got gas like later and stuff, but my dad was like, what was up with that town? I'm like, it's just some bad shit's happened here. Like you just don't want to know, basically. So like, but I had to pass through that town in order to get out to the Black Mesa and Lake Powell, like both directions. And so like, imagine like having a panic episode and like your one respite of like, because like just car rides are terrible for me, and like having a panic episode in a car and like you like wake up in essence from that episode and like look outside and you're in the FLDS town. It's like, oh, this is some Silent Hill shit that's going on right now.
Like I think I described it in the in my episode about it as the closest real thing there is to like a Stephen King style town with a secret.
Yeah, exactly. It's like I'm grateful I ended up there as opposed to Chilitown, basically.
Yes.
So yeah, the Black Mesa. I went out there twice in 2019. By that point,
so right before it was abandoned. Yeah.
Yeah, so I filmed, I'm the only person who filmed, actually, the last train going from the mine at Kayenta, Arizona, out to the power plant at Page. I was the only person to film trains that day. There's a whole, like, line of people who were out there, and it they're all taking photos and stuff, but I was the only person who was filming video. It's forever going to be, like, one of my biggest railfan feathers in my cap. When they started,
that was a truly unique line.
Oh my God, yeah. Well, and here's the fun thing. There was a rumor going around on that last day that their last remaining original E60C. So when the Black Mesa started existing, when they were born, ? I don't know. Like, oh no, shoot. I'm gonna send you a picture of this. I have a plaque on my wall that's a commemorative copper plaque that General Electric made to commemorate the production of their 50,000 volt or like 50 kV electric locomotives, but they're these like box cab E60Cs. They're these wonderful, like, weird tri-cab looking motherfucking engines. I love them so much. Like they're so like, like the Amtrak E60s that kind of look kind of graceful. And they're like, oh yeah, these are cool stuff. The Black Mesa ones are what the Amtrak ones are based off of, and they are the least graceful locomotives I have ever seen in my entire life. I just sent one to you. They look like pugs like had their wish fulfilled to be a real train. Like they I love them. I love them dearly, and I identify as them. They had exactly one of these left by this point in time. And so there was a rumor, like the rumor come out, does E60C is operational? The answer was no, unfortunately enough. They didn't wind up bringing it out that day. But the fun thing is that there's still one of those that exists at their Northern Arizona Railway Museum, I think it's called that, in Williams, Arizona. So, like, I remember, like, from the road, like, seeing this train go into the power plant area and, like, kind of trying to peek at it as it's going into the power plant. And I see this engine. I see this E60 down there. And I'm like, oh, I want to, like, take a peek at it and stuff and kind of see. And I wasn't able to get too many views of it. The cool thing is, and so you'll see this in the videos that I have on the Black Mesa, if you, like, anybody goes exploring my channel for these, is that the engines that the Black Mesa and Lake Powell has now, because they're all scrapped now, unfortunately, were Mexican engines. Which is a very interesting, like, I don't know if I want to get into that story right yet, or if we want to go into the other ones that existed, like the Deseret or the Muskingum. Like, what's your call? Can I go down the Mexican rabbit hole?
Absolutely, yes. Go down the Mexican rabbit hole, because that is a fundamental story of these Western mining electrified railroads.
Yeah. So we have to turn south for a minute to talk about the Mexican. We have to talk about the Mexican electrification between Mexico City and Guadalajara, which then was truncated down to Querétaro. What is it? Querétaro? I think it's Querétaro? Is that how it's pronounced?
My sibling Ollie studied abroad.
I don't know
there.
I don't know how to pronounce
Spanish. A few years ago, I actually sent Ollie a mission to, like, go take photos of the old electrification in Querétaro, and they were like, I can't. Like, I have no idea where that is and don't yet have the Spanish sufficient to ask. Yeah,
that's kind of amazing. It's just like, yeah, my like, I do love the idea of, in essence, just kind of like being like, hey, you're in this area, go, like, investigate this thing for me that, like, you have no context for whatsoever.
I've done that to people. I did consider a Tours Cabinet episode about the failure of the Mexican electrification.
I think that you should do it at some point. Yeah. I think that it's a very interesting story. So basically I'm gonna fucking pre-dude, the PRI, basically the one party, like, totalitarian state that ruled Mexico for close to 70 years.
Institutional Revolutionary Party, which I've always found, one of my second favorite oxymoronic political party name behind Canada's Progressive Conservatives.
Yeah, I mean, they're progressing the conservative movement. Like, what is that? There is a certain kind of, I think you and I share this humor of like absolutely, like, incorrect official names for things, just like,
Oh, yeah.
always loved like the Democratic Republic of the Congo, and it's
Yes.
like it's one of those things. It's in the Congo.
Yeah.
Like I don't
Yeah, and then some of these, particularly in the category of like political party names,
yeah
some of these are like old, when old political terms that don't mean the same thing anymore get fossilized into party names, like how in Denmark the leading center-right party is called Venstre, which means left, because they date back all the way to the 19th century when they were left-wing.
right, obviously.
Yes, and then they have a subsidiary party that is also there's also that old and also fairly right-wing today that is called radical left.
That's really funny, honestly.
Yeah,
I mean, as we
there was
know,
something like that. Yeah, there's something like that. I'm on this Reddit board called Imaginary Elections. There was a fantastic alternate history timeline that I saw a few years ago. Can't find it again, but I would love to. Where the point of divergence was that Italian immigration to the U.S. was much higher than in our timeline in the 19th century. So it's this sort of Italian-influenced U.S. today, and like Jorge Bergoglio, the guy who became Pope Francis, instead of his family ending up in Argentina and him becoming Pope, he was one of the presidents of the U.S. in this timeline, and fascism came to mean something different in this universe, and America in this world had a stable three-party system in which one of the parties was a mild-mannered center-left party called the American Fascist Party.
That's fascinating, honestly. I kind of love that, honestly.
Because that's an Italian word, fascism.
Right, fascia is an
because
entire...
Mussolini was the first person to say, this is an ideology that I created called fascism,
This is my original OC. Do not steal.
Do not steal.
Fascism.
Do not steal. There were people who were like, do not steal. Who were like, there were people at the time, who supported Mussolini but not Hitler, who were like,
one of those people was Mussolini himself. Actually,
absolutely,
he did not like Hitler at first. No.
Totally. There were people who were like, I'm a fascist, but I don't like Hitler. Hitler's not really a fascist. Hitler thinks fascism is about like killing Jews or whatever. Fascism is about the trains running on time.
God, I don't know. There's a lot that could be said about like, God, there's so many diverging paths in my head that none of them lead to a comment that I feel like I can ever take back on the internet. So I feel like I'm gonna like, I'm gonna hold my tongue for a second. Mostly just because like train fascism is the thing that like fascism is the thing that like keeps popping into my head. And like, there's a
thing about Mussolini. He didn't actually make the trains run on time. He ran on that. Like that was something that he said enough that people came to believe. He wasn't even a true
rail fan.
But
how dare he?
Most of the modernization of Italy's railroads, like Italy did have pretty good railroads, especially considering that it was, not one of Europe's richer countries at the time. Like it did have among the world's best railroads during the time of Mussolini, but that had mostly been done before he came.
Right. One could say that fascists are fundamentally really, really bad at running economies, honestly. One could say they kind of don't know what the hell they're doing.
Yep. And the greatest story of that is about, like, the story of the proto-fascist little kingdom in Trieste. Okay.
Yeah.
This is going to be a Tor's Cabinet episode on the main channel at some point. The time that a bunch of, like, romantic poets and artists and stuff, because that was originally the constituency for fascism. Like, it was understood in the early 20th century that, like, STEM people are far left and arts people are far right.
That's fascinating.
Yeah. Hitler and Mussolini both came from arts backgrounds. Meanwhile, a lot of the, in the USSR, in the early days of communist China, like the Politburo was mostly engineers. It was understood, like even in the West, on university campuses, when like communists and socialists attempted to do organizing, it was well understood that the science and tech people on campus are the people most likely to be communists. And then like the arts and literature people, like maybe they have far right sympathies, but they're definitely not going to they're definitely not going to join far left organizations.
So there's like a realignment that happened in like collegiate environments. That's fascinating.
Yeah, there was a realignment between like the sort of constituencies that support this that I feel like happened in the like 50s and 60s, and I don't know. I feel like it's one of the great stories of the 20th century that hasn't been well told, and I don't know exactly what changed. I've asked this question a couple times, and people point to phenomena that are much more recent that can't fully explain it.
Yeah,
but there was a time, before Mussolini rose to power, things that a lot of the things that Mussolini did in power were pioneered during the time after World War I, when Austria-Hungary fell apart. So Austria-Hungary had a port on the Adriatic Sea, Trieste.
Yeah,
it was one of the major cities of the empire, the only real port city that they had. It became part of Italy after World War I, but in the brief interim time, a bunch of wacky poets and artists took over the city and ruled for a few years, and snorted a lot of coke and did yoga. There were like mandatory yoga and meditation lessons for a little while. It was the strangest combination of it has sort of the same vibes as my episode about the neo-Nazi, neo-Victorian lesbian BDSM cult that made video games, because they were like the people who ruled this free city of Trieste for a few years after World War One. I can't remember how long it was. Not very long. Yes, it feels half like like if you let wacky 60s California hippies run a city, and also half like proto-fascism, because Mussolini admired them. One of the guys who was in charge of this later became Mussolini's right-hand man. A lot of the things that they, a lot of the like cultural tropes, sort of the glorification of ancient Rome, and like use of the ancient classics to sort of justify their rule. That was something that they pioneered. Even the salute, the thing that we know today as a Hitler salute, was first associated. Was a thing in the 19th century that was called the Roman salute, that would have been associated, probably not actually used in ancient Rome, but was like used in art depicting ancient Rome, and was would be understood as a Roman thing in like the early 20th century, and the use of that as like a signal of loyalty to the regime, that was first done in this free city of Trieste, which was then picked up by Mussolini, which was then picked up by Hitler.
I have a theory, and I think this is kind of my take on this, and I think this is a very interesting thing. Yeah. I think that traditional art's role in disseminating propaganda for state purposes and how that changed into a much more technologically focused field, I think is one of the reasons why that shift that you were talking about earlier happened. Because like I'm thinking about this, like there's a lot of the, you're talking about like the Roman salute was used a lot in like propagation of propaganda and that sort of deal. That was the role of a lot of state commissioned artists, right? Was to be like making propaganda.
You're right.
And so it's like that idea of like, if you're going into a patriotically focused, like post 1848 nationalist, environment and stuff, where like you are focusing entirely on like, these purpose, like the purpose of what you are doing is explicitly for furthering, state power and like nationalistic consolidation and stuff.
Yeah, like you get in the 19th century, you get the deliberate attempt at forging a national mythology for each European country.
That's the domain of the arts. And so I think that might be like a carryover of like that post-Napoleonic like idea of like, oh yeah, well, we need to be like creating a foundational like environment, and like, because it's no longer necessarily like a king patronizing the arts necessarily, but it's like a people and like a government doing it. So you kind of get that like nationalistic right wing sort of like look at it versus like the technical side of things, which is like all about exploration and like, patenting and making money, obviously, but like there's a lot more like curiosity involved in that isn't directly about state control. And I think
and something about and I feel like the communists in those days were more, I guess you could say, more autistic. They were more they were more about systems, about how society can function, can be made to function like a well-oiled machine.
They're just more utopian. I mean, that's like the
absolutely,
big thing.
more,
they're just more utopian.
Promethean,
Yeah, absolutely. And so like you think and so like that shift post World War II is that you get increasingly those folks being drafted into, I mean, look at the Manhattan Project, right? Like you see folks being drafted into like military programs principally, and that's where the money is. And so it says that like, hey, if you have like the numbers autism, then like you are going to be increasingly like, being put into like large scale military industrial complex projects. Whereas if you have the arts autism, like what is there for you at this point?
That point, after World War II has made too much nationalism toxic, then you're certainly not going to be doing that with your arts degree.
Right. There's more of a privatization at that point of it, and it shifts towards like, and then it increasingly becomes like more art house, and like as time goes on. So like I'm not going to say like there's a public private like section here. That's not my argument, but it's like
I feel like that's a powerful possible explanation for that.
Yeah, that's my thought.
How did we even get on this topic?
I don't know,
because we were talking about electrified freight railroads.
Yeah, I don't know, man. This is apparently I was reading the comments on the first episode, and this is like the sort of thing that some people are into. Specifically, they're just like, yeah, I'm here for like the side tangents and stuff. I'm like,
absolutely,
I don't know. The first the first one we were talking about,
if you're not.
Yeah, it's like the first one we were talking about like Bill Clinton being a brony. Now we're talking about fascism. Like, I don't know. This is just this is the scope of our friendship. We just we love intellectually. We love tintillating things here. Like
tintillating things. Yes.
Call me Tintin. Don't call me Tint. That was my father's name.
Your father's name was Tintin?
No. Absolutely not. No, it's really that would be.
Fuck. All right. Well,
I know, it's fine. Don't worry about it. So Mexico City to Guadalajara electrification. There it is. I do have like a little script. Like there we go. Finally, like I don't even know how long we've been recording it. Oh, an hour and 25. Actually, not that bad.
Not that. Not that long.
Yeah. So like. So originally it's because we're talking about the pre. So like the I'm gonna fucking pre dude the PRI, the Mexican institutional organization.
We talked about how the one party ruled Mexico from the 1920s through 2000s. It was called the Institutional Revolutionary Party. I said that was a fun oxymoron, like Canada's progressive conservatives.
And then we just went down the rabbit hole, and then so basically originally so the big thing about Mexican politics that a lot of people don't realize is that like Mexican presidents are term limited to a single term, single 6-year term, and that makes large scale infrastructure projects. We talk about like, I mean, in this country, like there's enough about like, oh, we're going to undo everything the previous administration do. That's just an art form in Mexico. Like that's literally just like, even within a one party system, like, as it was like, you had people undoing other people's shit all the time. Like AMLO did that about a decade ago with the airport. And so
the airport. How Mexico City now has a massive unfinished airport that AMLO stopped, held a referendum to stop the construction of when it was already mostly finished.
Yeah, which is interesting, and I'm actually surprised that his successor didn't cancel Tren Maya, which is its own disaster.
Yes, its own thing. I would like to go to Mexico and ride the Tren Maya. I'm amazed that they actually got it built.
Yeah. Even and it's like, I don't know if you've seen like the ES44s that they have for.
Oh, it's such the assortment of engines, the assortment of trains that they have brought to run on the Tren Maya is hilarious. Is totally, we were saying earlier, trains that I see in dreams. Like that is exactly like I follow some railfan Instagram account posted a photo of like a British HST and
Class 43.
Yes, and a bunch of next to like what was it? Just
probably a couple 70Ms, SD70Ms, and some M plates or something.
Next to SD70Ms and. Yes, and then one of those passenger trains that they have on them, and someone who didn't know about the Tren Maya, like the top comment was like, "What the fuck?"
Yeah, it's very weird. It's I'm actually surprised. So there's an update, by the way, since the last episode on the turbos. So one of the RTG turbo sets, one of the RTG3 turbo sets that New York had rebuilt in the early 2000s, actually got saved, which I'm so excited about. Yeah,
Nice.
it actually.
Where's it headed?
I have no idea. It's like, I think Rail X or something is like the folks who bought it. They're like a preservation company. But they sold a number of SPV 2000 shells to the Isthmus Railway in Mexico a while ago. And there's basically, like, we think about like RDCs, right, as like Bud cars with like Alco engines inside of them. SPV 2000s were, in essence, I think they were like 645 powered. So they're
I can picture those.
Yeah. Yeah, they're Amfleets with like little EMD engines on top of them.
Yeah,
and they were terrible,
they're funny
apparently.
looking.
Yeah, they're weird looking. So they sold a bunch of those shells down. So that company sold a bunch of those shells to the railroad in Mexico. But so that RTG, like one of the 3 RTG3s like remaining, got sold and is saved now, which I'm very excited about. So yay, update from the turbo episode. That literally just happened last week too.
Have some SPVs as like track inspection vehicles.
I don't think so.
One of the class 1s.
You might be thinking, this is a weird one, you might be thinking of the fact that CSX's geometry engine was an X Mark GP40 wide cab that was like built out of an F45 cab for a number of years. You know about that one?
I feel like I can picture that engine that you're describing.
Yeah. Then I'm not sure. Yeah, I don't think BNSF had any SPV 2000s. Okay, people are either like in the comments, people are gonna be like, why don't you stay on topic or keep going off topic? There is gonna be no in between there.
Yeah, well, the first group has stopped listening long ago, so we're here for the second.
Yeah, so the second we started talking about fashion, they're like, nah, I'm out of here. Fuck that shit. So Guadalajara. So originally it's supposed to go from Mexico City to Guadalajara, and they purchased a bunch of E60C-2s, which are like, those I wish I was a real boy, E60s that I sent you earlier from the Black Mesa, but just like upgraded and like double cabbed this time, and they're some of my favorite locomotives ever, actually. E60 C-2. I love them so much. I love the NDM logo. I actually really want to get the NDM logo tattooed on me.
Wow.
That actually is a whole, like, I unironically want to get
That's
like the
awesome.
Union Service logo tattooed on me.
I found an HO scale one of those, one of the NDM E60s at my little toy and hobby shop in downtown Eugene when I was little. Actually, that might have been the first time I learned about that. I was like, Mexican electric engines?
They exist. And it's really funny because like they bought the engines in the early 80s. Mm-hmm. They only started operations in 1994, and they only put like I think 28 of the engines in total into service. And like they only ran them for about 3 years before Mexican railroads were privatized. TFM, which is like a concession that Kansas City Southern purchased or like leased long term. Yeah, the whole concession system is a very fascinating thing that I actually would love to do an episode on in the future. Because like that, like Chicago School of Economics, like, hey, all you like global South countries with like public railroad systems, there's this concession system, the TLDR. So there's this concession system where in essence the country still owns the tracks themselves, but they long term lease them out to private companies. And so my like special interest in my focus,
better than the
selling
US
them
system.
Outright. Oh, absolutely. I mean, so my like area of focus when I was in grad school was on Mozambique, and so there's a railroad called the Nacala Corridor that goes between Nacala and Tete province of Mozambique. It's a coal hauling railroad. It's great. I'd love to talk about it some other time.
Sure.
But that was a concession that was given originally to Railway Development Corporation. So like basically Kansas City Southern long term, I think it's 99-year lease or something. The Eastern railroads, and so TFM, which is that railroad that Kansas City Southern helped form, basically we're like, hey, we want to start operating double stacks on this line, so we're going to shut down the catenary, basically.
I didn't know that was why. Only recently did I learn that it had gone into service at all. Like the inaccurate impression that I had, mainly because I couldn't find any photos of them in operation. Mm-hmm. Like there are still vanishingly few photos or videos of the Mexican electrics in operation. Yes. But I really thought that it had never been completed, that the electrification had never been completed.
Yeah, honestly, I just sent you a playlist that can be linked, I guess, in the description of the. There's a really fantastic YouTuber out there who I was only informed of after my first Deseret video kind of went a tiny bit viral before chicanery happened, and I needed to pull it down for a little bit.
We both have our Deseret video.
Yeah, we do actually. Thank you again for the shout out in mine on it of mine in there,
problem,
honestly.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's I think I commented gay in your in your video specifically, which I mean, hey, you know, I that's just who I am. It's like I am Shadow Deseret. I'm gay. This is who I am. So anyway, so
someone made it. I think someone a while ago made, seemingly in all seriousness, many years ago on Reddit, I saw someone make a like Mormon pride flag, like a pride flag for people who are gay and Mormon, and it had the Deseret letter gay on
so
it,
good.
and all the people were, you know, which is like, yeah, fantastic as a comment, but all of the comments were just sus.
No, that's great. Honestly, I'm here for that shit. Honestly, like it's, I don't know, having gone out to
letter
YouTube,
looks like an Among Us.
Okay. I actually forgot about that.
Yes, that's why. Yes, because the Deseret letter gay, like, it's one thing to have a letter called gay. It's quite another that it looks like an Among Us.
Yeah, absolutely. God, that's really funny, honestly. Yeah. Okay, so yeah, so they shut down the so the funny thing is that like so it's not like you can't just raise the wires, right? So like in India, for example, this is something that I found out very recently.
That is so cool. I saw that.
Yeah.
I saw that when I was in India in 2019. Double stack, electrified double stack trains. That's so cool.
It's the cool thing too is that since the scale of the engines in India are so like I'll you can, you know, like I'm just sending images that will be like in the video and stuff, but like, you know, since the scale of Indian locomotives are so small, it really puts into consideration just like how big US trains are, because like here the engines will be, you know, pretty significantly bigger in comparison with like a single container, but like over in India and like other railroads that like use the sort of like British standard for like loading gauge and stuff, they're basically only the height of a standard 40-foot container, and so like seeing like those like electrified double stacks and stuff is wild because it puts into consideration just how big they are. 40 feet is long. It doesn't seem like it.
Well,
like, I don't know,
allegedly, I don't know if this is true, but I've heard rumors that originally the directive when the Indian Railways sought to establish electrified double stack trains, so India obviously has a much wider track gauge than the US. It's almost a foot wider than standard gauge. It's the widest track gauge in regular service anywhere. And so they were like, you know, doing some blue skies thinking. They were like, hypothetically, we could use this to have absolutely berserk loading gauges. What if we had triple stack intermodals?
No fucking way.
And I think they only decided against it because of the possibility that wind would blow the trains down.
That would be the most like literal, like because back in the day, back when double stacks first kind of came out in the US, like one of the big ones was like I think it was the maxi stack and stuff, so like literally like that's just stack maxing at that point to kind of invert it at that point. Like triple stacking is just stack maxing. I love that, honestly. Yeah, because that already looks so extra as is. Wow, God, I love Indian trains so much. Unironically, I desperately want to go to India to like go rail fan and stuff, because that just seems like a very, very fun time.
That's its own whole world.
Oh, God, yeah. No, honestly. So TFM shuts down the electrification. A lot of these E60 C-2s don't even enter into service initially. So, like, they're just, like, a lot of them get sent off to Texas, where they get stored for a while. And there's an interesting harebrained scheme that develops. Okay. Obviously, a lot of the railroads we've already talked about, like, start purchasing these engines because they're like, oh, our original crop of E60s are... or the E25s in Texas Utilities case are, you know, getting old, they're getting long in the tooth. But there's this harebrained scheme to sell a bunch of them to Montreal's commuter railroad. Oh. And so
yes, Montreal, that's the other city that has electrified commuter rail.
And so the fun thing about that is that also came about initially because of a tunnel. The Mount Royale Tunnel.
The Mount Royale Tunnel, which has now been converted into metro service.
Light metro.
Yes,
what they call it.
A separate, the REM, a separate network from the Montreal Metro, but it's its own. Montreal is now one of the cities that has two metros, basically, like two separate
it's
rapid
the most French
transit
thing ever.
metro systems. It's similar to the Paris Metro and RER, which are not interoperable, or the two separate Tokyo subways that are not interoperable and were originally built by two rival companies. I mean, the New York subway is like that. It was built by three rival private companies, and it was difficult to unite it all into one system.
New York, extremely French.
Yes, the REM is cool because it is one of the few systems worldwide that I think that has all of these three features in one system: platform screen doors, overhead wire electrification, and automated trains.
Yeah, it's weird, honestly. Like, I've always wanted to go to Montreal for a lot of reasons, but like,
it's a great city. You should.
Yeah, I'd like to. I mean, if I'm gonna go to Eastern Canada, I just want to go. And we've talked about this before, but I just want to go out to the Cartier.
Oh, so do I. I went up into northern Quebec while I was there. Went up to Saguenay and saw some interesting trains up there.
The RNS is so cool. Did you see any of the Super Sevens? Did you ever see any of the Super Sevens there?
I tried. I didn't have much time up there, and I had to. I was traveling with Kinley and London. And I had to do what they wanted to do, and then we actually got out of there earlier than planned and drove back to Montreal because there was a snowstorm coming in. This was just a few days ago. This was May 1st. There was a snowstorm coming in on May 1st up there. That is something you still have to worry about this late in the season.
Happy May Day. Get I think it's especially so, like, I mean, on Mexico, like, so for a long time, like, the backbone of this is like pre-privatization and stuff, but like the backbone of the NDM and then FNM fleet was Super Sevens. They were like rebuilt GE C30-7s that were they look like these Dash 8s. Anyways, so they tried and sell these like E60C-2s to REM, and so eventually like what winds up happening
is called AMT at the time.
AMT.
Agence Métropolitaine des Transports.
I forgot that it was AMT back then. Thank you for the correction. I guess now it's EXO.
The ones that are
EXO.
still operating as commuter rail are called EXO, and the ones that they converted into a metro-like system are called REM.
Yeah, that's fascinating. So AMT, like, that deal falls through, and those engines wind up getting scrapped. I think just a few years ago, actually, not even that long ago. But the other E60C-2s from NDM, they wind up on the Texas Utilities Railroad, the Navajo Mine, the Black Mesa and Lake Powell, and the Deseret Western. And so tell me what you know about the Deseret Western, because this is your favorite out of all of them, right? Is that where you're at with that, or is that?
The Deseret, that's different from the Deseret Power Railway?
Oh, so back then I believe it was still called the Deseret Western, and then they rebranded as the Deseret Power.
Yes.
Yeah. The Deseret Power.
Well,
I
guess
when did they rebrand, actually?
I guess I would say the Deseret Power Railway is my favorite because it's the one that's still operating.
Yeah, it's fair. But survivorship bias. I
don't know.
Oh yeah,
my favorite might be the Muskingum because it had automated operation. There actually was another one up in Canada, I think also up in northern Quebec that had automated electric operation. And I think the Prime Minister of Canada, Brian Mulroney, back when he was in a business career before getting into politics, I think he was in charge of that mine. I think he had some involvement with the automated electric operation. I've seen videos of those. They had to have the horn constantly blaring to remind people that these trains were automated. So it was super annoying to be around, I'm sure.
I think it's like, so those specifically, I just tossed it to you. They are SW1200 MGs, which are very interesting little creatures. They are like literal, like they look more like extended GE70 tonners than SW1200s actually. I love them. Yeah, the automated railroads are awesome. I guess, like, you know what? it makes sense. You got like you feel, it feels like to me, this, correct me if I'm wrong, it feels like you have the autism, just like if something can be like a beehive, you're like into it, just like a little automated thing with a bunch of like creatures working around and stuff.
Yep.
Yeah. Okay.
Yep.
Okay. That's fair. I mean, same, honestly. That's as somebody who grew up playing RTS games, like, I mean, I'm here for that.
Maybe that's
like
why
SCV
we both
online
sort of
stuff.
respect the Mormons.
Honestly,
if something
they're
can
like
be like a
bees.
beehive, That's what Deseret means.
That's
literally what Deseret means.
That's incredible. I love beehive autism. I mean, that's lots of. I mean, I remember like about a year ago when we first met, like I shared with you that like railway network system for Avalon, the like,
oh my god,
world
yes,
I've been building for.
fictional country, like future, distant future America. With with extensive details, extensive details about its rail system,
like the what was like a 25-page document or something like that, and like that itself also like exists basically like as just one big hive for numerous reasons. So I've weirdly never gotten into City Skyline, but I do want to get into it at some point in the near future.
City Skylines,
I know.
Yes.
I'm hoping to.
I have lost cumulative months of my life in City Skylines.
I'm not surprised. Yeah, we're beehive autism. That's just how I think. Okay, that's the branding of it. The E60s wind up everywhere basically in the West, and the big one is the Deseret Power Railway. I looked it up. They rebranded in 2001. So I think right after they got the E60s, they rebranded. I mean, you talked about it in your last episode. I mean, like, what's your knowledge on the Deseret Power at this point? We've talked about it a lot, but like, I'm curious, like, I've been yapping for almost an hour now, so.
Yeah. It's in the desert on the Utah-Colorado border.
Because I remembered a thing, and I remembered the reason I laughed is because I remembered a thing that I had like commented. I wanted to comment on your video, but I wanted to save for this, and I was laughing because I didn't write this down. So the mine loadout, you want to know what the mine loadout's called?
Isn't it called Bonanza?
No, that's the power plant.
Okay.
It's the mine loaded is DeSardo, which is Deseret, Colorado. It's a portmanteau. Yeah. And I only just realized that when I was watching like the Deseret video. I'm like, wait a second, that's what that means. No shit, that's amazing actually. So
I learned
anyways,
recently up in Montana near Glacier National Park, there's a lake created by damming this has a railroad related story to it.
Really?
The Flathead Tunnel, the 7 mile tunnel on the route of the Empire Builder on the old Great Northern in northern Montana near Glacier National Park. Another one of the longest tunnels in the U.S. It's one of the few tunnels that long that has never been electrified because it was built. It was built for diesel trains at a time when they already had the technology to ventilate a tunnel that long.
Right.
Because it was built in the 70s, long after most of the rest of the line had been completed, and it was built because the Army Corps of Engineers built a reservoir that covered up they built a dam that flooded part of the route that the railroad had previously taken along the Kootenai River, so they had to take a detour and just tunnel straight through the mountains.
I never knew this existed.
You never knew the Flathead Tunnel existed?
I never knew that the Flathead Tunnel existed. I'm gonna be honest, in St. Marias Pass, like that route is like one of my like blind spots in the West. What do you mean Lyndon B. Johnson ceremoniously triggered a final explosion connected via telephone wire?
Yep.
Why is that the most 60s thing I've ever read in my entire life?
Yeah.
What?
And the reason that I brought this up, just randomly, the lake created, that required the creation of the Flathead Tunnel. The lake that they created is created by damming the Kootenai River, and it you're very close up to the border with Canada there, so it crosses into Canada. The lake is called Lake Koocanusa, which for a while I thought was some native word. No, it stands for Kootenai, Canada, USA. Koocanusa.
I love that. Man, I love that. That's actually really incredible. But no, I had no idea that tunnel existed. Talk about railroad cryptids. I just feel like this is why I love this hobby. Is that there's
in the middle of nowhere. It's like compared to like the Cascade Tunnel, which is a very famous, very long tunnel that was electrified when it was originally built. That's in central Washington State. Like I've been there, and you can drive right up to each end of it.
Yeah.
It's right along
Yeah.
US 2. It's easy to railfan. Flathead Tunnel is not easy to railfan. I've ridden through it on the Empire Builder, and I have been, on the ground, not on a train. I have been near that area in Montana. I've railfanned in Whitefish and in Glacier.
Right.
But I haven't been up to, I haven't, gotten to, not on a train, either end of the Flathead Tunnel, because it's truly in the middle of nowhere.
Yeah, no, that's definitely okay. That's on my bucket list now of places I need to go to.
Absolutely.
I think there's I think I've said this before to you maybe, but so my best friend, we went on a big excursion out to southwestern Idaho last year. That was the duck story. I think I've said that before, the duck gun story in Boise.
Yes.
Yeah. I think I might have said that on recording, but TLDR, we watched a guy slow motion chase a duck through an in and out in Boise, Idaho, whilst having a 45 caliber pistol pointed at his dick. It was great. But on that trip,
perfect introduction to being in Idaho.
Oh, absolutely. It was great. I was right next to it. It was at a mall that was right across the street from a potato field.
Yep.
There was a group of youth group kids that were singing Kung Fu Fighting. It was like I was in a PvP zone. I never want to go back to Boise ever again. The other interesting thing about that was I was going to do a whole bridge trip with them, because this is back before I realized that they're not interested in their special interest is not in train bridges or bridges in general. It's about bridges that have collapsed and killed people.
Okay.
And so it's just okay, well, I have a whole bridge trip. We're gonna go out to Lewiston. We're gonna go out to Lethbridge, which you and I've talked about before. Do all these really big trips and stuff. And so we're really gonna take them through Marias Pass. And now I haven't. I was oh wait, no, that's not their special interest. And so we weren't planning on doing that trip. So the Deseret.
Yeah.
There's this. It's in the middle of nowhere between DeSardo and Bonanza, which is in the middle of freaking nowhere in Utah.
Yeah, truly freaking nowhere.
Absolutely. It's closest to Dinosaur. Our little buddy, every time we were driving through Dinosaur, he'd go Dinosaur, and we had to get him a dinosaur plushie over there, obviously.
Of course.
Yeah, the 5-year-old wants a dinosaur. We have to get a dinosaur.
Yeah.
But that's the biggest city basically, or Rangeley is where we're staying at. But Dinosaur is the biggest city out there, and it's so beautiful. I'm not sure how much of my footage you wound up seeing out there and stuff, but it really is emblematic of this Western coal hauling railroad thing, because it's it literally just exists for the mine and the power plant. That is it. There is nothing else about that. And at this point, there's every one of their E60s except for 2 of them have been repainted in Deseret Power paint. But the cool thing about this is that there was never really any incentive for any of these railroads to repaint their engines, because they exist in the middle of nowhere. You don't need to brand, what we were saying about earlier with passenger trains branding. You're not looking to gain customers if your only thing is a power plant stuff. So for a long time, both the Black Mesa, the Navajo, Texas Utilities, and Deseret Power all had NDAM painted engines on their property. And so I was able to get some drone footage of the 2 remaining NDAM painted engines, which I think are the last remaining NDAM painted engines in the United States at this point, probably.
Sure. I mean, where else would they have any of them?
Aside from occasional cross-border stuff in El Centro, which I did wind up seeing an SD45 and FNM paint back in 2015 in El Centro, cool. Which was kind of one of the coolest things I've ever seen in my entire life, honestly. But aside from that, permanently NDAM painted things, I think they're the last 2. That's the last one at this point. That's a full heavy haul coal hauling railroad at this point. And it kind of, like you said earlier, there's that survivorship bias, is it's unique because it's the last one.
Yeah.
But it really does feel just kind of an interestingly the same as the Black Mesa in a lot of ways, but it's I don't know, it's a very fascinating railroad. I will say we're approaching the 2-hour mark. I want to talk about the Coatesville thing real quick.
Go ahead.
And then I think we can probably call it at that if that works for you.
Yeah, sure. Well,
okay.
I think we need to talk about the Henderson Mine Railroad, and then we can call
I keep forgetting.
You forgot again about the Henderson Mine Railroad.
Shame on me. Oh,
yeah,
no.
Well,
Go talk about the Henderson Mine Railroad.
We were getting to that eventually.
Info dump about the Henderson Mine Railroad, my friend. I have only watched I've only watched one video on this. This is your moment to shine.
Yeah. Well, the Henderson Mine Railroad. Okay, do you want me to infodump about the Henderson Mine Railroad now?
Please.
All right, yeah.
Oh my God.
This one. I don't know if it has one now, but for a while, it didn't even have a Wikipedia page. This is one of the most unique and obscure railroads in the entire world. So, if you look up what is the longest railroad tunnel in the United States, the answer will be that it's the Cascade Tunnel in central Washington state. It's 8 miles long. It has, and apparently it has always been, since it was built in the 1920s, right? It has been the longest railroad tunnel in the United States. If you look up what the longest railroad tunnel in North America is, people will say that it's the Mount McDonald Tunnel in Canada, in the Canadian Rockies. That's a cool one. Yep. Yes. That's like 11 miles, right?
Yeah, give or take.
Yeah.
Yeah, I almost collapsed at the west portal of that back in 2023, but that's a story for another time. Yeah, it's a long one. I think it's a bit over 9 miles. I think is what it is. I think it's like 9.2 miles, give or take. I haven't been to the East Portal. Have I been to the East Portal, the Connaught Tunnel, but not the Mount McDonald Tunnel?
Yeah, I think the East Portal of the Mount McDonald Tunnel is pretty difficult to access if you're not on the train.
I mean, it isn't actually. I'm just more scared about the bears. There's a lot of black bears out there. Okay. So
no, there's a lot of bears.
If I take you out there, you're bear bait. That's your that's your rule. But anyway, so the that's traditionally the one that everybody thinks is the longest in North America.
But slightly longer, I think, longer even than the Mount McDonald Tunnel by just this much. Was the tunnel on the Henderson Mine Railroad. The Henderson Mine Railroad was this extremely short railroad, mostly consisting of a roughly 11-mile tunnel in the Colorado Rockies. Also, surprisingly, given its obscurity, not that far from stuff. It's pretty close to like Breckenridge, pretty close to some of those ski towns.
Yeah.
It served a molybdenum mine, which is colloquially known as Molly, which I think is funny. Yeah, it's like you look up Henderson Mine Railroad. I'm like checking my facts here. It's like there's a one of the first results that I get Googling Henderson Mine Railroad is a site from the Climax Molybdenum Company that purports to be leading the world in moly.
Hell yeah. I love the idea of earthbenders from Avatar doing molybdenum and like, or however you pronounce it.
Yeah.
Molybdenum? And like they're like, we're doing Molly.
Yes.
It's like, okay, cool.
They're doing Molly.
Yes. Earthbending rave would go so hard. But
oh
anyways.
My God, yeah.
Oh God, it's the coordinated dance from the fucking M. Night Shyamalan thing, but it's in a rave setting. They're all wearing candy and like freaking like fursuit tails, and they're all like just out of their mind on Molly, but like of the different kind.
Yes, of the different kind. Yes,
from the Climax Mine, of course.
Yes, from the Climax Mine, which had, I'm not making this up, a glory hole, which also means something different in the world of mining. When a mine causes the land above it to collapse, when land starts collapsing down into a hole created by an underground mine, that's called a glory hole.
That's incredible. Yeah, I mean, that makes, I guess, like, that doesn't quite make the entire state of Florida just one big glory hole, but it makes me want to think that that's what's happening as opposed to regular sinkholes. Yeah, that's very funny. Okay, so the Climax Mine.
Yes, the Climax Molybdenum Mine in that led the world in Molly. It still does. The train doesn't run anymore, but only because it's been replaced by a long conveyor belt. But it had its own electrified railroad. It was electrified, again, because of the long tunnel. The tunnel, notably, only had one entrance. Oh. Yeah, there was only one portal to the tunnel because the other end was the deep underground molybdenum mine. It was also the only Cape Gauge Railroad in the United States. I think it was 3 foot 6 inches. That was the track. That's the standard gauge in South Africa, which is why it's called Cape Gauge, as well as Japan. Yeah, it's the standard gauge in Japan and Taiwan, and where else? It's in use in a lot of places.
Yeah. I always thought of Cape Gauge as like narrow gauge, but I don't think that's the same,
narrow.
Right?
Well, there are a lot of gauges called narrow gauge. Like anything narrower than standard gauge gets called narrow gauge.
It's fair. Interesting. Yeah, but I guess like because I'm thinking like so Cape Gauge, because like the only other thing that I can think of that like meets that criteria in the modern U.S. is the US Gypsum operation out of Plaster City, which uses the White Passing Yukon Montreal Locomotive Works engines.
Aren't those meter gauge?
Oh gosh, I don't know. Hold on, I'm looking that up now.
Yeah, look that up.
How Plaster City track gauge. Yeah, I feel like it's yeah, it's it's just 3 foot. So yeah, 3 foot 6 is wow.
So even narrower than meter gauge.
Ah, interesting. So that literally, oh my god. Okay, so that really is the only
3
Cape
foot.
Gauge.
That's a small train.
It's a small. I would love to take you out there sometime. It's a very weird little. They still use like these like Canadian cabbed like Alcos to like just haul a bunch of gypsum and stuff out there, and it's like they literally go on like on a bombing range. Like they run through like the outskirts of a bombing range, which is just fascinating. So there's just like unexploded ordnance and stuff near there. It's great.
But anyways, Mojave Desert, that is.
Oh, absolutely. So Cape Gauge, Swedish electrics, right?
Yeah,
so
Swedish electric engines. I managed to find some video footage. I'll be putting that on screen. So we do have some visuals. If you're listening, please look now. I have video footage on screen of the Henderson Mine Railroad. It looks so industrial. It should be the set of some dystopian or like found footage horror movie,
or like a Die Hard movie. You know, like the engines kind of have like a Die Hard, like Molly Hard with a vengeance. Rave Hard. So Rave Hard is my favorite sequel to Braveheart. Change the meaning of a movie title by removing one letter. Raveheart.
But yes, it is still, I think, the largest molybdenum mine in the U.S. and possibly the world. And yeah, it had its until the 90s when it was replaced by a conveyor belt. It had its own really weird, really unique little train that had the longest rail tunnel I think ever built in the United States that nobody knows about because it was just that obscure.
Yeah. And it's honestly like so the fun thing about this, and this is kind of the shared experience of railroad media from the 1990s and stuff, where both of us have watched probably the one tape on this railroad. And I only watched it a couple years ago because I was building out my VHS collection, which I still need to do video on at some point in the future. But like I only watched it a few years ago, but this was like a formative video for you, right? Like that was something that you watched when you were really, really young sort of deal?
Yes. It was like, I discovered this and it made me, I wouldn't say that it's that formative in the sense that like we wouldn't have Tor's Cabinet of Curiosities if we didn't have that tape of the Henderson Mine Railroad, but it did definitely foster an interest in obscure stuff like learning. Rail tunnels have long been a very specific aspect of my train autism, and discovering that when you look up the longest rail tunnel in the U.S., the answer you will get from most sources is wrong because there's this obscure little railroad nobody has heard of that has a longer one. It made me think, definitely made me realize there's always more depth to a story.
Oh, absolutely. I mean, that's what doing Molly as a kid will do to you.
I were waiting for that one.
I was. I literally. I came up with that joke over a minute and a half ago. I was just like, I'm waiting to pounce. But no, I appreciate that. Like, I mean, I I got introduced to like Mexican railroads back in like I was like maybe like 8 or 9, and like I only got introduced to like the electrics probably about a few years later and stuff. I've always been obsessed with them since then stuff. But so I guess like this kind of wraps up this episode and stuff. I'm gonna do like 2 plugs on my end. Just because like I didn't do them last time.
Go ahead.
And so I've got 2 things. So obviously I have a YouTube channel, Railfan Junction. Feel free to go take a look. I appreciate everybody who came over to my end from the first episode. I do have videos both on the Black Mesa Lake Powell and the Deseret Power Railway on there. I'm hoping in the near future I also have railfanjunction.myshopify.com. I'm hoping to actually have 2 DVDs on both the Black Mesa and Deseret, hopefully published sometime this summer. I do original DVD programming in addition to my YouTube stuff, typically documentary style videos. So forgot to plug both of those last time that we talked because I was having way too much fun and forgot to do, the part of this that involves shilling my shit. Yeah, do you have anything to shill at the end here?
Shill your shit. I think my shit is sufficiently shilled. Considering that this is my channel that this is releasing on. Check out Tor's Cabinet of Curiosities. Join the Patreon. If you join the Tor's Cabinet Patreon, you can then join the Tor's Cabinet Discord, where you can have discussions like this literally 24/7.
Yes. Don't sleep. Just talk.
No, be like Jim. Jim, like, I wonder when Jim sleeps, because he really seems to be on the Tor's Cabinet Discord 24/7.
If you ever want to interact with people like me and sometimes Tor and mostly Jim, go to the Tor's Cabinet.
Yep. Yeah, we're really selling it now, aren't we?
We are really. It's great. Jim's awesome. So of course,
really
it's an easy sell. It's not a hard sell at all. But yeah, go give Tor money. Just do that stuff. Cool. Well, thanks for listening, and I will get that RSS feed up as soon as I can.
Thanks so much.
Stay curious, everybody.
Stay curious.
Okay.